Greetings, everyone in Luqman Nation. Peace, everybody. I am Jackie Luqman, and welcome to another episode of the People's Power Hour in Luqman Nation here on Black Power Media. Thanks so much for joining me this Friday evening. Appreciate each of you, and a little subdued at the moment as many of you were on the stream that just ended, an impromptu stream that Jared Ball did to inform us of the news coming out of Philadelphia that Mumia Abu Jamal's appeal request for a new hearing based on the suppressed, hidden evidence that was found proving the misconduct, the racist animus toward him in the case, the prosecutorial misconduct, the bribing of witnesses, all of that. His appeal was denied. I encourage you to go back and check out that stream that Dr. Ball just did, where he had Mumia Abu Jamal's grandson on, and Michael Sheffield, I believe it is, who is has been a long time Mumia Abu Jamal organizer, activist, warrior, trying to, working to free our elder. And once again, a judge has denied justice in a system in this country that is not built on justice. And so, there's another example of Black girl magic for you, because the judge in this case is a Black woman. And there's your concept of progressive prosecutors, because Larry Krasner's office, remember, he came into the prosecutor's office in Philadelphia under the guise of being a progressive prosecutor. And I remember making the argument when I actually met Larry Krasner a few years ago at a Netroots convention that I went to, and Abdus didn't come with me this time. That time, Netroots was in Philadelphia. I believe it was a Netroots convention, some convention we were involved in. And Larry Krasner was speaking at one of the panels, and there were some local Philadelphia activists who took issue with Krasner. This was a few years ago when he was still riding high on that progressive prosecutor garbage. And there were local Philadelphia activists who took issue with the way he handled some cases that were in opposition to his progressive prosecutor claims. One of those people who spoke out against him at this panel was Pam Africa. And if you're not familiar with Pam Africa, she gives it to you raw, unfiltered every time. And I encountered Krasner because of his open hostility toward Pam Africa in particular during that event. So after the formal panel, he and some folks from his office were standing outside. So I went up to him and I asked him, I didn't ask him, I said to him, I think it's really not a good look that you have such animosity toward Pam Africa, because he said of her in the session that here she is confronting him in a way that is no better than the way Donald Trump talks about people with the coarse language and all that kind of stuff. And, folks were legit taken aback by that disrespect that he had toward Pam Africa. So I said to him, I don't think it's a good look. You say that you're a progressive prosecutor, but you're not only dismissing these folks in Philadelphia about the way your office has handled these cases, but you just flat out disrespected in a really vile way a Black woman who has been in the struggle for justice for Mumia and all political prisoners in this country for decades. And I think that was uncalled for. And his response to me was less than pleasant. He reiterated his accusation, his smear against her, that she, responded to him in a way that was no better than Trump. And that's how Trump talks to people. And I said to him, well, regardless of the kind of language Trump uses, he lies. I don't believe that anything Pam Africa said to you was untrue, was it? Because it wasn't that you challenged the veracity of what she said. You didn't challenge the claims that they made about the details that they were raising. You seemed just to not like the fact that she was cussing at you. And I feel like the cussing was warranted. And I'm standing in the middle of the hallway with this dude, and I said, "Look, I feel like," and I couldn't live stream it or video it because I was in the conversation with him, and I'm actually surprised that nobody captured it. That was very weird. But I said to him, I think that the fact that you didn't challenge any of the points that these people raised about the actual issues, the actions that your district attorney's office either took to keep people in jail or did not take to get people who are innocent or have been subjected to some type of prosecutorial misconduct coming out of the previous administration in your office. You didn't take issue with any of the things they actually said. You just didn't like the fact that Pam Africa cussed at you. And he and the rest of the members of his office, I'll never forget, one of those people was an Asian woman. They literally squared up around me and like looked down on me and said, well, you're not from Philadelphia, are you? Because I had my name tag on. You're from DC, so you don't know what goes on here. And I looked at him and I said, but those people do. And you can ignore me, but you can't ignore them. And I said, so much for being a progressive prosecutor, huh? And that was, I have to say, that was 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not a surprise that Larry Krasner has done nothing in furthering the case of justice for Mumia Abu Jamal, because that progressive prosecutor garbage that he ran on was exactly that, was garbage. So I don't expect him to do anything in light of this judge's ruling. But I do remember like several of my progressive friends actually falling out with me when I told them, yo, I had this interaction with Larry Krasner, and that man is garbage. That progressive prosecutor stuff, that's bullshit. That he's a cop just like the rest of them are. He's a pig just like the rest of them are. And certain folks, who one of them sadly has deceased, we fell out over that. She just like, well, just didn't want to have anything to do with me because I criticized someone that she put up on a pedestal. And I guess I say this to say that we are not in this work to uplift or make heroes out of anybody who is acting as an agent of the system. That's what prosecutors are. That's what they do. So anybody who is a prosecutor who says that they are acting in a different way to hold the system accountable, that's garbage. No, they're not. They can't keep their job if they do that, because they work with the police. So I feel like this needs to be an object lesson, another one of these object lessons for us when these politicians who are campaigning to get elected by us for positions within the state to uphold the laws of the state. We need to be clear that these people, that's just it's just a tactic for them to get our votes. They're not really progressive doing anything. They're not doing a damn thing to change the system. So we understand that the fight continues, the struggle continues for us securing Mumia's freedom. Um, it's disheartening news, but do not be discouraged. Use this to fuel the next steps that you will take to continue in this fight. So I just wanted to hit that really quick because I appreciate Dr. Ball talking about this for a few minutes. And we need to keep this and the struggle for all political prisoners. I hope you were able to watch the Breakthrough News and Black Power Media simulcast premiere of the Pendleton 2 documentary that was produced and edited by Black Power Media content creator and comrade 2 Black and other folks last night. It was excellent, and there was an excellent discussion afterward. Please go back and check that out. Incredibly, incredibly important that we continue this struggle to free our political prisoners. So with that said, thanks y'all for joining me. Quaker Anarchist Leah Boggs, Yipper 99, Sugar Booger 7, Manny Nile, James, come down a little bit, Toby, Goddess Crew. Thank y'all for joining me. And I'm really glad that we are able to have this conversation tonight, because I really feel like what I just talked about the struggle to free Mumia Abu-Jamal and all political prisoners is deeply connected to grassroots organizing. We always talk about organizing, that unless you are connected with an organization that is doing the work from the community up and from the community out to deal with imperialism, not just capitalism and police murder and prosecutorial misconduct domestically, but how all of that is connected to U.S. militarism and imperialism around the world. That's very important in all of the struggles that we are engaged in. So I'm really, really happy tonight to be joined by, for the first half hour, 2 of several young college aged organizers who are engaged in the kind of grassroots organizing that we talk about all the time. So I'm very glad to have an opportunity to talk to tonight Latrice Johnson, who is an Africana Studies scholar at Howard University, and Delaney Leonard, psychology major and archaeology and language minor at Howard University, to talk about their grassroots campaign starting on the campus of Howard University to challenge the Department of Defense and Air Force's multi-million-dollar research deals. So I want to bring them on right now. Thank you both so much for joining us, Latrice and Delaney. It's good to see you all. Good to be in community and in support of you all for what you are doing. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting us to be here and speak and share with you all a little bit about what we've been doing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of this, because I think that most people are not aware of the presence, not just the presence, but the pervasiveness of different apparati, whichever one is correct, of the state on HBCU campuses. And I need to make it clear, we're not just talking about, in this case, with what you all are doing, we are specifically talking about Howard University. But I think we need to understand that the agents of the state are involved in college campuses across this country, HBCUs, MSIs, and PWIs, like all of them. But their presence on HBCUs is particularly onerous. So tell us a little bit, Delaney, about this contract that you all are organizing against, what it is, what they purport to do with it, and why you decided to organize against it.
Yeah, so the contract is essentially a 5-year deal that's between Howard and then the United States Air Force and the Department of Defense. And it's basically to create a university affiliated research center, UARC. And so this will be the first one that's sort of based in an HBCU, but there are 15 that exist already. And so Howard sort of becoming the first HBCU is in an effort to sort of lead a consortium of other schools. I believe Spelman and Morehouse are included. I believe FAMU and other sort of smaller HBCUs that we will be kind of leading forward. And so I feel like before I even get into what the contract is about, it's really important to just baseline say that Wayne Frederick, the president of Howard, is saying like this is an honor, this is something to celebrate, this is something that's good. And so off rip, um, support from administration and sort of like the pushing this onto the students is extremely adamant, which is part of the reason why both Latrice and I and our other comrades find it very important to resist that propaganda that they're doing. But to get into what the partnership is actually, doing, it's $90 million, so about 18 million a year. And it's essentially to fund a research center dedicated to developing advanced tech for the military. So basically the technology that will be created is going to be AI technology for actual machinery and also AI technology for facial recognition. So in terms of the AI technology for actual weaponry, Don Rawat, who is the director of the Data Science and Cybersecurity Center at Howard, explains that Howard's UARC will focus on advanced battle management systems and tactical autonomy, which the Air Force defines as autonomous systems, which is AI, acting with delegated and bounded authority of humans in support of tactical short-term actions associated with a longer-term strategic vision in war. So basically, this is means that Howard students will be in cahoots with the military, helping them to create AI technology so that officers don't actually have to physically go out and do these actions. And this will most prominently take the form of drones, working on drone technology, the same drones that are used in places like Palestine and Africa. We all know what's going on with that. The second component is the facial recognition technology. And this is what the Pentagon has basically described as technology that can predict criminality or terrorist potential using only a facial image. And that is exactly what they state that it is. So, sort of reading in between the lines there, in order for facial technology to work, you have to get the images and the parameters from somewhere. And with AI already heavily being biased towards identifying Black features and also brown skin tones and other things that we most prominently see in Black and brown individuals, this technology is very obviously going to contribute to the oppression of Black people, both domestically and also internationally. So that's kind of what the deal is actually about. Howard is going to try to say it's about everything but that, but point blank period, it's about creating tactical drones that can be just sent with a click of a button, highly capable AI run robots, and facial recognition technology to predict criminality, which I just find that really blatantly disgusting. That there's a notion that we can predict criminals, even though we're going to code the machinery to only identify Black people. So I think one of the big reasons why Latrice and I and our other comrades find it very important to sort of resist this is one, Howard students have to understand that the military and imperialism impacts us, and sort of by the university pushing this contract on us, we're being complicit and we're aiding in United States imperialism and in colonialism and neocolonialism. And so getting students to understand, like, you don't have to stand for this. You don't have to take what the administration gives you. But also, two, as Black people who we claim that we come to a HBCU because we want to benefit Black people, Black interests, whatever the situation might be, even if you just came here because you just wanted to get an education at HBCU, selling out your own students to create technology to facilitate in the killing of other people that look like you is a blatant slap in the face and offense to the intelligence and creativity and all the diverse aspects of all the students here. And it's essentially Howard stating that this is what you can use your talents for. This is what Black excellence is. It's, a Black face in a white industry, and that negates all of the bad aspects of it. So I think a big component for us is really like letting the campus know that this is not an example of Black excellence. This is an example of imperialism, that we're ultimately doing this work for white capitalist interests at the end of the day. So I think that's why me and my other comrades, we are resisting this, we're pushing back against it. And the biggest thing is really raising that consciousness for people to understand, like, you know, a black overseer is still overseer. That's sort of like the little slang, the little thing that we've been using on some of the flyers. You know, you're still overseeing, you're still doing, you know, that white supremacist work. So that's what I would say is kind of the situation overall at the moment.
And Latrice, you know, this idea that um, this contract is an example of the kind of black excellence that Delaney raised, that the administrator Frederick at Howard University, who I think people need to really understand that on most HBCUs, the president or the administrator or whoever it is who is the head official of the university, they're black, but they're also usually conservative, right? So this is one of the reasons that these kinds of things happened and are celebrated. So how do you guys see the ability to break through that very conservative ideology of black excellence as an expression of upholding the status quo? You know, black excellence at Howard University is absolutely all about getting the bag, right? It's not about challenging the systems as they exist to that cause the exploitation of black people, but it's also a very class antagonist type of expression of black excellence, where, you know, all of the class interests of working class and poor black people, who are the most impacted by these kinds of programs and policies, are completely dismissed, and should be, because you, Howard University students, you need to get this bag that's being represented by the good jobs that this contract is going to offer you. How do you contend with that in your organizing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, One of our flyering slogans is that Black visibility is not Black power. Just because somebody who is Black is in a position of power does not mean that they're actually doing good for the community. So, one of the people that we cite most frequently is Wayne Frederick, because Howard students are most familiar with him. They are aware of his administration style. They're aware of the fact that, like, because of him, we are seeing increase in tuition. We don't have adequate housing. Students are homeless. They do not have a place to stay. We're admitting too many students. There's just so many issues here on campus that are because of our current administration and the board of trustees, who aren't even Black. But they still, like Delaney was talking about, they still cater to that white supremacy system. And Wayne Frederick does the same exact thing. So I think that the whole concept of Black visibility not being Black power is something that is very personal to Howard students. And with our campaign, we are hoping to raise more examples of those instances, and really stress the importance of not selling out, you know, always working. When we move throughout our lives, like, we should always stay grounded to who we are as a people, and that is African people. So building consciousness around African identity is another task that we have as well. And just understanding that the exploitation that's caused by these systems is something that we need to avoid. We cannot be complicit in systems like these, because at the end of the day, what good is making uh, millions of dollars if Black people are still, you know, in bondage, and we haven't really truly achieved liberation? This is a struggle. We all need to be free. You know what I mean? It's not tangible just for a few of us who have money, who are able to, um, engage in, like, upward mobility and all those types of things. If, working class Black people are still um, subjugated to all of these oppressive systems. And so it really, I feel like it just boils down to caring for one another. And unfortunately, being raised in this capitalist system and receiving a colonial education has caused so many Black people to feel so disconnected from each other. And so I really do believe that like restoring the idea of like humanity is something that is important. You know, caring about one another instead of valuing profits over people. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And something you said, Latrice, that I want Delaney to pick up on. You said that the board of trustees of Howard University, the Black Mecca of higher education for Black people in this
Mhm.
country, and there's a whole history behind who Howard University is actually named after that I learned through our support of you all in this campaign. Because I think, let me back up. Let me take a few steps back. We came into your orbit because you reached out to us, members of the Black Alliance for Peace, and asked us to support you in your campaign. So this is how we knew about this effort. This is how we knew about this contract. This is how we knew that there was already an organized effort among students happening at Howard University. Because actually, when the news of the contract came out, we were sharing the article amongst ourselves, and we thought, I wonder if there's a way that we can raise this, do a little political education on Howard University campus. And then, like a day or two later, one of you sent me an email requesting that BAP provide support to you all. And I'm like, look at the
Divine
ancestors
time.
just lining stuff up.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so, so that this is how this all came about. And so in learning about just this, what this contract is, and the very long history of state not just involvement but infiltration of Howard University's campus for decades. We also learned that Howard University is named after a white general who got his fame from chasing down indigenous peoples and became a hero of the Civil War. Um, in order to hear the rest of that history, and I'm hoping that we will be able to, and this is something I have to talk to you guys about later on. I'm hoping that we'll be able to videotape the upcoming political education session, the public political education session on April 3rd. We'll talk about that in a minute. But just the fact that the premier university for Black higher education in this country is named after a genocidaire, a white genocidaire. And who knew this, right? And so this is my question to you, Delaney. Do you find that there is a lack of understanding about these deep contradictions among the Howard University student body that are inherent in the existence of the college itself, who it was named after, which carries implications of why what he wanted Black students to be educated on, if he you know what I mean. If they don't know that about Howard University, do they know what this UARC contract is, what it entails, what the implications could be for African people on the continent, and even possibly domestically, because we are talking about AI fueled surveillance. And it's not like they're not using that technology right here on us already. This is how we know it's so faulty, right? But also basic stuff like the fact that the board of trustees of Howard University isn't full of Black people. So who is making the decisions about Howard students that affects Black students? So in your organizing centered around this issue, what has been your experience in regard to the level of education about these things, these inherent contradictions of Howard University among the students you've encountered?
Yeah, I would say the level of education is relatively low in terms of students sort of understanding one, this contract, Latrice and I and our other comrades, we've been flying throughout the week. And, one of the things that we're hit with often is like, wait, isn't this contract like a good thing? This is a good thing. This should be celebrated. And it just speaks to the incredible, highly effective propaganda that the university is able to push out onto its students. And sort of going back to what we were talking earlier, they frame being in cahoots with, capitalist, white supremacist orgs as black excellence. And
Mm,
so because the university has done such a good job at sort of framing Howard as this illustrious mecca of black knowledge, and claims that were for black liberation and all these other different things, they sort of paint this really beautiful picture of it. Most students sort of just roll with that, and they don't take that extra time or that extra step because they don't feel the need to. Because you should be able to trust the people in your university admin. You should be able to trust the president of your university in an ideal world, and we know that that's not true. In terms of speaking on the board of trustees being mostly white people, it's unfortunate because a lot of HBCUs are similar in terms of high level admin, board of trustees are white. And so it sort of speaks to the way that HBCUs are sort of used in some ways as sort of a pandering tool for the country to say like, hey, look, we have these spaces for black people, stop complaining. Essentially, you have a space that you can go to, not realizing that the same investments, the same sort of attention is not put into them as PWIs. But going back to what you were saying, it's crazy because I was in the School of Business like earlier this year. I'm not in the School of Business, I'm a psychology major, but I was in there for a little screening. And on the wall, when you walk in, they have this big, all these different portraits of all these different, I believe, like heads of the School of Business. I'm not exactly sure, but a high level position in the School of Business, right? And I think I counted like 5 black people. Mind you, this is a full wall of, portraits of these people, predominantly white men. That's the first thing, mostly men. The black people that were there, I think there was one woman. So predominantly men, a couple of women, one or two black women, and like 5 or 6 black people in general. So that's just a blatant example of how, the university claims to serve black people's interests, but ultimately it's a black university entertaining white people's interests for the purpose of gaining funds, for the purpose of gaining money. And
mhm,
so it kind of raises the question like, okay, if you're doing this to gain money, where exactly is that money going? We have an $839 million endowment. I believe that's actually lower than what it is now because that's as of like 2020. So it's like we're doing all this to get all this money for who, for what? Because it's not going into housing, it's not going into food security, it's not going into transportation for students who live off campus, it's not going into improving technology for things like registration, for things like Canvas issues, all these different things. Where's the money going to? It's going to admin, it's going to administrators, it's going to raising tuition costs, it's going to investing in war profiteers, like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all these different orgs. So I would say, while Latrice and I and our other comrades understand this, the average student unfortunately does not. I think the average student has to understand like, hey, the military is bad because it's harmful to people overseas, but they don't make the connection to imperialism, capitalism, and colonialism. And I think that's really the key, is getting Howard students to understand like, you being complicit in this contract and also the other organizations like the FBI, the CIA, ROTC, Army that Howard has partnerships with, is essentially being complicit in United States imperialism, because that's ultimately what these things are. There's like no other way about it. There's no way to, sort of claim that that's not what's going on, because that is what's going on. So I would say the consciousness is relatively low. I would say a lot of other areas of consciousness on campus are already low in terms of just sort of Pan-Africanism and, Black liberation as a whole. There's definitely a subset of students, a pretty decent sized subset, that do understand like the contract is bad, the military being on campus is bad. But in general, I think that consciousness raising that we've been talking about this whole time really is the key to creating resistance on campus and getting students to actually, contribute to cultivating a movement and a strong opposition and a sustainable opposition, because it's not enough for students to just say like, oh, that's terrible, like we don't, that's bad, this contract is terrible. What are you going to do about it? That's the gag. How are we going to organize around this? How are we going to mobilize and force the university to listen to the demands of the students, because they're not going to do it on their own, frankly. So I would say hopefully that answered your question. I know I got a little bit long-winded, but yeah, just I
No,
think the consciousness raising is really the key in all of this.
no, that is the answer to the question. That was the answer that I was hoping to get, because I think people have this idea that, we organizers, we just do sexy splashy stuff all the time, and we're always, we like being in front of the camera and all that kind of stuff. That you know, we need to be clear that organizing, it's nuts and bolts work. It is flyering. It is having difficult conversations with strangers who are uninformed about issues and can sometimes be kind of antagonistic when you confront them with things that they don't know, who can be resistant to change, who might be a little bit aggressive because they think that you are criticizing them personally. And it's a lot of uh, on the ground background work that is not sexy, that is not political education, that is not, done in front of cameras for a big, public event with thousands of people. That's the kind of stuff that gets the goods. 10 toes on the ground, consistent, grassroots, person to person, conscious raising, political education, connections making, relationship building kind of stuff. And that is what you all are starting. I want to make it clear. This is not a one off, flash in the pan, oh, let's do this to get some attention at Howard University. What you just said, Delaney, was long, a long standing, consistent, sustained campaign. That is the goal, to the and the ultimate goal is to get something changed, to get this contract rescinded. If that doesn't happen, then the goal is to raise consciousness so much on the campus of Howard University that it makes the people who want this contract, who are carrying out this contract, uncomfortable as hell, and to make them look really bad in the public eye for bamboozling African students with capitalist, imperialist, and militarist, get the bag, here's a job for you in 4 years kind of bait and switch. So, having said that, Latrice, you all are having your first public event in the next coming days. So tell folks about that. And people who are in the Washington, D.C. area, Maryland and Virginia, please take note, because if you can attend, you are encouraged to, absolutely.
Yes, yes. So we are going to be holding a teach-in April 3rd at 6:30 in the evening, from 6:30 to 8:30 at Shaw Library. So there is a meeting room and it's downstairs. And so yeah, that will be happening on Monday. During the teach-in, we'll have both of our organizations speaking. So there is HU Dissenters, which Delaney belongs to. I'm from Spirit of Sankofa, and there will also be the Black Alliance for Peace, PSL, Party for Socialist Liberation. Did I say that right?
Yes, socialism and liberation. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then the All African People's Revolutionary Party, among others. And we're going to be talking about the role of HBCUs in this militarism, in imperialism. We'll talk a little bit about Negro exceptionalism.
Hmm.
We'll also have space for discussion, just because this event is for Howard students along with community members. And so there might be some, residual questions after we do our presentation. So we'll have an open discussion just to kind of like engage deeper into this topic. And then lastly, we'll have our elder, Baba Rafiki, close out with the student's responsibility, really driving it home to the Howard students that show up. Why is this important to us? What can we do about it? So yeah, I hope to see you all there. I'm excited.
Yeah, we will. I will be there. And we're gonna work out how if the event will be live streamed, because I want people to, because people are very used to, because of COVID, right? We're
Mhm.
used to everything being live streamed because we had to pivot to that,
Right.
because we couldn't be in person. But we have to kind of get away from relying on everything being live streamed, because we have to remember that these social media platforms, as useful as they are also tools that the state uses to surveil us. So we don't want the state having access to everything we do. I mean, when we have a public event, and I mean we generally, just organizers in general, when we have a public event, sometimes that is when the state needs to find out we're doing stuff. Sometimes we don't need to be, advertising everything we do, putting all of our political education sessions, putting all of our internal, things on social media. There's a utility for that. There's a time and a place for that, certainly. But organizations certainly have the right to say, no, we're not going to do this for this one. We would rather have people show up in person, and then we'll kind of intermittently do that. So that's something I'm going to leave up to the organizers, and I will be sure to let you all here on Black Power Media know what we decide. But again, stay tuned for the upcoming events and upcoming statements and work coming from these young organizers, because as they have made clear, this is just the beginning. It is just the beginning. And I'm not going to say everything that can be said about where this could go, but it could become much bigger than what we see now. So stay tuned. Thank you all, Delaney and Latrice, so much. HU Dissenters, Spirit of Sankofa. I will see you all Monday evening, and I will see the rest of you in just a moment as we bring on some other grassroots organizers to talk about another aspect of grassroots organizing, and that is the international connection. We talked about the starting from domestically and making those international connections, but there's a bigger kind of grassroots organizing that I think we need to get some clarity on. And so we'll be right back. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. I hope you really enjoyed that segment with our young organizers from Howard University. So, as you know, I'm a member of the Black Alliance for Peace, and I am the what am I? I am the coordinator for the Black Alliance for Peace DC Citywide Alliance, and I'm the co-coordinator for the Black Alliance for Peace Mid-Atlantic region. Yes, I all the jobs, and this is kind of the reality for most of us who have been with the organization almost since the beginning, as the organization or as the formation has grown and matured and has, I guess the word I'm looking for, solidified the kind of structure that we want to tackle the international issues that we want to tackle. And it is really important, and I'm learning this is something you don't know. So like this is not this organizing thing, it's not like something that is second nature to me. Like I didn't wake up one morning and like, ooh, I'm gonna organize people. No, that's, and I don't think that's something that is like, I think that's common for most people who are organizers. Nobody really wakes up or is born just knowing how to do all this stuff. I don't know how to be a coordinator of any kind of formation, a cadre of people, but I'm learning. And that is the beauty of organizing. You learn how to do it, and it really is just, how to talk to people or how to work with people in different capacities to get tasks done that will benefit other people who are not yourself. And as you learn to do these things, then you become a more effective organizer. You may not be the person who does the public speaking, but maybe you're the person who becomes really good at creating graphics, right? For campaigns. Maybe you're the person who does a really good job at coming up with marketing campaigns, because we need those, right? Maybe you are the person who actually is very good at organizing public events, like I'm not great at doing it, but I'm learning on the job. So there is this aspect of grassroots organizing that is extremely important in campaigns that are internationally focused. And I thought it was really, really important to have these folks on tonight to talk about that aspect of organizing, where people see some of the work that the Black Alliance for Peace does and think that what we do is somehow different and disconnected from the 10 toes on the ground, grassroots, people to people, house to house, knocking on doors, having conversations, organizing that, we talk about for domestic issues. So let me stop talking and bring onto the screen and into the stream some of my favorite people. I also love this about the Black Alliance for Peace, that the people that I have come in contact with, and I have to tell you, I didn't know any of these people before my involvement in our formation, but knowing them, they have enriched my life. They're amazing people. They're fantastic human beings. First of all, like they're just good people, but they are also some of the smartest, sharpest, most dedicated, committed folks that I've ever met. They're all younger than I am. And I think that is very, very important, because this whole thing about generational solidarity, connection, support, we got to get that right. We old heads got to give these younger folks doing this work, um, coming after us, we've got to give them their props. So I'm really appreciative to have Austin Cole, Clow O'Brien Moscasco, otherwise known as PLN's Ghost, and our very own Ricky Ryan, Erica Keynes, all members of the Black Alliance for Peace Haiti America's team, on tonight to talk about not just the upcoming BAP April 4th campaign. We seem to launch a new campaign every April 4th on the anniversary of the formation of the Black Alliance for Peace. But not just to talk about this campaign, but to talk about how we are going to organize in a grassroots fashion, organically, to advance an international core campaign. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie.
Absolutely. And so I want to start with you, Cloud, because you're still in Peru, right? Okay, yeah, there's a little bit of a delay, so we'll just, internet being what it is. So I think for you being like literally in a foreign country, the idea of grassroots organizing around an international campaign, or a campaign with international implications, is very interesting. So I wonder if you can help people understand what this campaign is. Particularly, it's the Black Alliance for Peace is signing on to the CELAC Zone of Peace campaign, and this is very important. But I wonder if you can being in a part of a region of the world where that is a part of the Zone of Peace. Why is this so important for the Black Alliance for Peace to take up this campaign? And how do you organize in a grassroots fashion around this effort that is international, but doing it
Yes,
not
thank
in
you.
the belly of the
Peace.
beast? Uh, you're muted. We
Mm-hmm.
can't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I think we've just got a delay here. Cloud, we're not hearing you at all. So maybe you can do audio. Yeah, audio only. Okay, she's going to go out and come back in. So, Austin, while she's working that out, please explain to people what this campaign is and why it's so important for the Black Alliance for Peace to engage in it, particularly at this time.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. So a little bit of background about where, you mentioned CELAC, which is a community of Latin American and Caribbean states. So back in 2014, January 2014, CELAC had a meeting, and they sort of came out of that meeting. And one of the things that they proclaimed was that, or one of the things that they declared was that the Americas should be a zone of peace, right? And so they've got kind of 8 different things that go along with that, that in more detail about what that is. But the kind of gist of it is that the Americas should be free of militarism and war, right? And that kind of able to, countries should have their sovereignty, recognized and able to assert that, right? In a certain way, and sort of trade and region building on a kind of peer-to-peer basis, right? And getting rid of this kind of, US kind of hegemony, right? The idea that Latin America and the Caribbean is the US's backyard or front yard, right? And so this idea of the zone of peace, right? And so that was in 2014. And the states, CELAC, the states of CELAC kind of agreed to that. And they've lifted it up a little bit in the last year as well in their last meeting. But what we are doing, right, in the campaign that we're focused on in the zone of peace is not just thinking about what that state-centered declaration, right? Because that's important. And it's important to recognize that there are, states that have been working towards that and are doing that work to create a zone of peace, right, in the Americas. But it can't just be the states, because obviously the U.S., the way that U.S. imperialism works in the region, right? States have certain things that they can and can't do. You see, the consequences of Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, right? When you stand up to, U.S. imperialism, the empire strikes back, right? So that those sanctions are real, right? The way that all of that stuff works is very real. And so we, as the people of the Americas, right, have a role in constructing that zone of peace, right? And so that's really what our work is now, right? The work in front of us, and why we think it's so critical, is to build that popular movement element, right? And to support that the way, and not say that we are building it all across the region, right? But to help coordinate that, right? To help, the folks that are already in the, in Latin America, in the Caribbean, throughout the region, and have been, organizing for years, have been working towards peace, towards many other goals against imperialism. For us, who colonize folks within the belly of the beast, as you mentioned, it's important that we play a role in, in working towards that, right, in that popular struggle as well, right, and in recognizing that, within the belly of the beast and in the U.S., so-called U.S., we are, geographically here, right? And one of the reasons that we are calling this a zone of peace in our Americas is to get folks here to understand that this is not, the U.S. and the U.S.'s front yard or backyard, right?
Mm.
This is an entire region, an entire hemisphere, right? And particularly as Africans in the Americas, right, and other colonized folks within this country, making sure and understanding that we are actually part of the same people, right? We are part of this region. And so we have a role to play in that popular struggle. And so why it's important now is because more than ever, we say this a lot, right? The enemy is organized, right? Like they are organized, right? And we got to be organized too. They are organized in a hemispheric and a global level, right? I'm sure we're going to talk about Southcom at some point. Southcom just came out with some new directives and their kind of challenges in the region and all of these things. You read that and, you could almost put that as kind of the negative version of like what the zone of peace is, because it really lays out point by point how they are trying to continue U.S. domination in the region, right, and access to resources throughout the region, and the way that they're trying to kind of fight, any government that dare kind of stand up against them. So that's really why right now, particularly the zone of peace is important, because the enemy is mobilized and even more and becoming more and more aggressive, right? Not the other way around. They're getting more aggressive, and we have to be organized and we have to kind of be connected as well.
Absolutely. Now we've got Cloud back, so let's hopefully we'll be able to hear you well this time. Nope. Nope, we can't. We're getting no audio. Let's just give it a couple of minutes. Because y'all know sometimes technology just be technology.
That's right.
Can I just add something while we wait?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's also alongside what also was saying. It's also important to note that the launch is on April 4th. And April 4th is, as we said, BAP's anniversary. BAP was created in April 4th, 2017, so it'll be 6 years. But it was also created under, April 4th is also an important date when we recognize Dr. Martin Luther King. And then
Yeah,
also,
sorry about that, folks. I
okay,
hope you can hear me now.
I'm glad we fixed it. Yeah, I'll just wrap that up though.
But yeah, as I was trying to say
I'll let her
before, I think being here. Oh no.
Oh, you're good. We can hear you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's coming from.
No, don't worry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm, now we're hearing now we're hearing background noise, but Cloud, you can go ahead. We can hear you. Hmm. I hope we can resolve this, but Ricky, you go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying that so BAT was founded on April 4th, 2017. Um, because of uh, as a way to honor Dr. King, because BAP is clear on the significance of Dr. King well beyond his dream. Um, his ability to connect the domestic with the international is evidenced in his speech why I opposed the Vietnam. Why I opposed the war in Vietnam, I believe, and that's the type of analysis that flourishes in. So that's evident in this sort of activated call with key partnerships and key organizations to launch this campaign for the Zone of Peace. So it was really, really important that we did it on April 4th, not just because it's our anniversary, that's a highlight, but because of what that day means. And not just because of King, but also because April 4th, 1949, that is when 28 European and 2 North American countries got together and formed NATO. Um, so we understand NATO. I know Austin sort of mentioned briefly that we might get into Southcom, but we understand, especially BAT Haiti America's team, that Southcom is just an arm of NATO, and we can see that clearly in the sort of Southcom operations like Operation Trade Winds, where we have France and the Netherlands and Canada and the U.S. They all come in partnerships with Caribbean nations like Jamaica and Trinidad, etc. And they sort of do these little military drills and practices, and that's a yearly thing that they do. And those are all the NATO allied countries coming into our region to conduct these sort of activities. So we do want to emphasize those points as part and parcel of why we see this as a significant campaign, but also I appreciate that we were brought in after the conversation with the Howard students, because when we talk about not just the sort of um, foot by foot, door by door organizing and canvassing, I think the PE part of it is very significant. And I think starting with recognizing and understanding yourselves as colonized Africans is very important to understanding yourself part and parcel of our Americas. Particularly because when you understand yourself under through that framework of internal colonialism, you understand that we are not just colonized. We're colonized people politically, socially, and economically in the same sort of ways. And I think that's very, very important because that is the colonial relationship that we have with this larger society. So it's a relationship that's categorized by institutional racism, and we can see that play out in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I think that it's very, very important that why we say our Americas or Nusra Americas. When we say that, we're sort of pushing back on the idea that any part of this region is our front yard, as Joe Biden would like to put a twist on the Monroe Doctrine that turns 200 this year. Um, so we see that's 200 years of coups and military proliferation and sanctions and all of that. But we can also recognize that here within our own communities, because we always say, AFRICOM and 1033 program are interconnected, but we should also understand that so is Southcom at a 1033, or and Israel is over there as well. So they're training um, uh, right-wing forces to put down grassroots and people-centered movements, just the same. So I think when we make these interconnections, we can understand that the Zone of Peace is a broad campaign for the region and not just for Latin America and the Caribbean, but it is centering Latin America and the Caribbean, because when we understand what's happening in that region, we can better understand what's happening to us here.
And that's the crux of the kind of organizing that needs to be done, that will be done around this campaign, helping people, particularly African people, which seems to be always the thing we are educating people on in BAP, Austin. And that's why people should care, why people, particularly African people in this country, should care about Latin America being a zone of peace. Like, what difference does it make? Why should we care what's going on in Latin American countries? And how do we have these conversations? How do you have these conversations with people about why CELAC is important to Southeast DC, to Baltimore, to Oakland, to South Carolina, and why a zone of peace way over there should matter to folks who don't have peace here?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of the crux, right? You're getting to it, Jackie, around why we are around a lot of the work that BAP does, obviously, as we all know, but also specifically in the Americas, right? We're rooted here. I mean, I like to say often, when I've had the ability to, live and study a little bit in the Caribbean and Latin America, and it's always interesting that people, ask me where I'm from. And then they ask me where I'm really from, right? And those things, and when I say my family's from Mississippi or Alabama, right? And they're like, no, but where are you from? And especially Black folks in the Caribbean and in South America. And then ask them where they're from, and they say Cuba, or Colombia. And I say, well, we all were on the same, ride, right? We got off on different stops. And so from the history, from way back when, we are not different people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are in different circumstances, right? But we're all Africans, right? Here in the Americas, on the one hand, if you go back. But even thinking beyond that, right? Even obviously, like in our current circumstances, our circumstances are different, right? Our contexts are different, even within the US, but particularly between different countries. And one of the important things to understand is that for folks to understand is, on the one hand, our economy, the economic system that influences all of these different interests, that influences, whether we're able to buy food, at a reasonable price, right? Whether we're able to, rent a house, right? Or maybe even think about ever buying a house, right? All of those things, that capital that runs that does not know any boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is global capital, right? Those same companies that are, these same hedge funds and private equity firms that are buying up, thousands, hundreds of thousands of homes throughout the country, particularly in the South, are also buying up property in other countries, right?
Right.
Are also invested in, gold mining and lithium extraction and all these other things in other countries, right? They're also they're waiting with bated breath to flood the food systems of other countries with the same crap that they feed us here, right? So that on the one hand, like on the economic front, borders do not matter, right? They do not care. They want to establish an entire free trade zone. So all of those things impact us directly, right? If you are thinking about, that in 2021, particularly, there were a lot of protests in Haiti around garment workers, right? Especially, but workers in all different fields in Haiti, in all different sectors in Haiti, protesting low wages, right? The Hillary Clinton, the State Department under Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration fought to ensure that Haitians could not push to increase their wages, right? They wanted to keep starvation wages for Haitian garment workers and other Haitian workers in those sectors, right? And folks fought back in 2021 and 2022 as well. Why do I bring that up, right? Because they're doing that in order to have low low costs of labor, right? So they can extract higher profits in the global north, right, in the US, and also ensure that there are these countries that are always going to have low cost of living, which is another way to say like low wages, right?
Right.
And so because
Mhm.
those countries have low wages, right, the jobs that might be in the US, right, are never going to come to the US, are never going to be in the US, because these multinational companies are ensuring along with the US government that these places are destabilized, that these places that they can come in and offer these low wages, um, and so that they don't have to have workers from the US, right, who are working here. I mean, we've all seen this, right, with deindustrialization throughout, particularly in the Midwest and the South, as well as in a lot of, it happened earlier in a lot of places on the East Coast, and on the West too. But we saw that in unemployment rates are huge, are massive in the US, right? Because global capital, can export across all these countries. So on that end as well, there's no separating we can't kind of put up a wall around this country and say we're going to make everything better in the US, right? I mean,
Mhm.
hopefully, as Africans, we shouldn't believe that. At what point in US history gives us the confidence that making things better in the US will make our lives better, right? Well, show me where that is, right? But that, on the one hand, there's that. So that's all a lot of economic stuff as well. But at the same time, on the kind of cultural and social front, we understand when you travel, when you visit places where, there are Africans in other countries, you understand that there's a reason, the way that we see Cuba, the way that we see Colombia represented in our media, you don't see Africans in those places,
Right.
right? The
That's right.
first time I went to Cuba, about 60-70% of
Man.
the folks you would think are, you would identify as African in the US, right? Similar in many places in Colombia, right? We don't get shown that. And that's intentional, right? That's an intentional thing to make us sort of not identify with those places. And so that as well is an understanding that these similar things are happening in these other places. And then last, I'll just say, you see, particularly more and more with the climate crisis, with sort of the acknowledgement that maybe there's a different way to do things in the US. Maybe we should have a different economic system. Maybe we should have a different relationship between policing, between, safety, between all of these things. And what do we get when people start to think about that, right? We get Cop City, right? We get
Mhm.
the police training center in Chicago, right? We get Biden promising to, going toe to toe on Twitter with Republicans saying, no, I'm more pro cop than they are, right? We get high inflation, right, and a lack of and cutting food stamps, right? And so you understand that the response to us, sort of the consciousness raising here in this country, is to attack working class people, is to attack, Africans in this country and other colonized folks. And it's the same playbook that's been happening in Latin America, right, for years, right? That's been happening in the Caribbean under the Monroe Doctrine for hundreds of years, right? You can take all of these things away, that land has been stripped away from people. And it's almost, it's not exactly the same because context, place, and space and time matters. But you can see the similar playbook happening in many different places, particularly happening in Colombia now, happening in Honduras, happening in all these places where folks sort of have an idea that they say, actually, we want to do things a little bit different. We want to have some self-determination here.
Right.
And the US government does not want that, right? And they don't want that for us either. And so in terms of, why does this matter for us? Why should I be thinking about it? Because, as I said, the empire does not sort of take they have no problem, visiting upon us in the past and in the future what's been visited upon the rest of the region, upon the rest of the world as well.
Absolutely. And the point you made about the way the US government, let's be clear about what happened in Haiti with the wages of Haitian workers in these US garment factories like Hanes and what's the other store, big brand name,
Levi.
Levi's.
Levi's. Yeah, it's people tried to frame that as it was just the Clinton Foundation, like a private corporate. but Clinton was the Secretary of State at the time. She was running her family's foundation while she was Secretary of State. So people who make such a big deal about Donald Trump and what he did when he was president, y'all get the hell out of here, because the Clintons did it first and they did it best. I'm sorry. They got a whole country, a whole country's government that the United States installed, by the way. So it's not like that was a hard thing. But they got a whole country's government to force to violently put down a people's rebellion demanding decent wages in order for Hanes and Levi's and other garment makers, corporate sweatshops, to continue to make the underwear and the jeans and the other clothes that we wear in this country at exploitation wages for Haitian people. The Clinton Foundation did not just do that. The United States government did that at the behest of not just Hillary Clinton, but the entire capitalist system. So when people in this country say things like, all we need to do is bring manufacturing back, I hate to tell y'all this, but somebody needs to tell you that's never happening. Mm. Manufacturing as a way for the middle class to flourish as it did before it was destroyed, and that's never happening, because a large and robust middle class, and even a working class that has all of their material needs met, is not in the political interest of a capitalist system. If they must keep wages suppressed for workers in every other country where capitalist interests exist, I don't know why people think that that is a different equation. They're going to treat American workers differently. No, they absolutely are not. Manufacturing is not coming back. Politicians who campaign in this country, who campaign on this idea that, I'm going to bring manufacturing back the way Trump did. No, it's not going to happen. It just isn't. So we need to organize for that scary, terrifying S word, socialism, that honestly is only scary and terrifying to Americans.
Right. I would also add, even like we could see that same sort of hypocrisy in the terms of democracy, right? And human rights, which are just ideological props for this government. So even it's really significant to say that this is the 200th year. I think I just heard today a speech by the opposition leader in Zambia, who sort of called out that hypocrisy that the U.S. seems to just be coming around the world, talking about democracy and never acknowledging that they are responsible for a whole bunch of displacement and occupation and all kind of nonsense that has gone on throughout the world. So it's not significant to say that the U.S. has the entire world carved up into 9, military commands, including space, and over 800 military bases. But not just that, they also utilize institutions like the Organization of American States, right, and the Core Group, and policies like the Global Fertility Act and unilateral sanctions to ensure the interests of the U.S. capitalist oligarchy. So even when we talk about, the working class, we also have to keep in mind that they don't just do it through the mechanisms that you and Austin talked about, but they also do it through soft power and then hard power as well with Southcom. So all of this is going on, again, very interconnected. I always make the point to say that, again, if we have that sort of internal colonial framework, then we can understand or recognize sanctions within our own communities as food deserts, as the welfare reform. All of these things as the day of 42 million that was just cut off, or has their welfare and food stamps repressed. So we can see those type of incentives as the same, or utilized and working in the same way that sanctions work in Latin America and the Caribbean, and it's for the same reasons. So it's really, really important that we really stick to drawing all these connections, because when we talk about a zone of peace, we have to understand, like, to contend with it, like like Austin mentioned, is to contend with those layers of policing and neocolonialism and neoliberalism that, is why we're not seeing those manufacturing jobs come back. They have privatized it and sent it over. Um, so we have to move beyond, the representation, identity reductionism sort of analysis that we have, and understanding what it truly means to fight for power. And I think the zone of peace is a call for that, in by means of a self-determination, and a local manifestation of that could be the fight for community control, and
Mm-hmm.
how we understand even liberated zones, even, right, which are territories um, that we have complete control over. And I think that's what the fight is that we're seeing. We can actually see examples of liberated zones in Latin America and the Caribbean that we can draw from and connect from. But I think what the Zone of Peace campaign does is open those conversations to create a network for ongoing struggle and ongoing communication ar- throughout the region in popular people struggles. So we're looking to build this from a bottom up and not always rely on the state to sort of push these reforms, but be active in how we see these things go through. Because the zone of peace is a call for the region. We have to start understanding ourselves as part and parcel, but um, you know, the working class really has to really understand themselves as centered in this struggle for the zone of peace, because we would be the ones who get the brunt of it otherwise.
Absolutely. So, to wrap this up, Austin, what should we be expecting from the Haiti and America's team from BAP in pushing this campaign on April 4th? What should we be looking out for? What should we be expecting from you all?
Yeah. So on April 4th, I think Erica mentioned a little bit, but there's gonna be a press conference in Washington, D.C. It's gonna be hybrid, right? So some folks will be there in person, but folks can sort of tune in online as well, April 4th at 10:30 a.m. And so Erica and myself will unfortunately not be there because we will be in La Habana, Cuba, as well, sort of doing some activities around there, building with some folks down there too. So we'll be sort of engaged there. And there will also be one of our member organizations, Molagaf, who's in Haiti, will be doing some work in Haiti, actually in Port-au-Prince. They're going to be doing some activity there. So we've got several different things happening that day. So I would say on the 4th, be ready to kind of listen to that press conference. We're going to have a lot of materials coming out. So there will be a declaration. We'll be launching a new part of the website as well. So folks can kind of check out some of the resources there and learn a little bit more about the campaign in that way. And then after the 4th, obviously, this is just the start, right? So I think when we've said the campaign, some people are like, okay, like campaign, what day? What day does it start? What day does it end? And it's like, oh, no, baby, that's not how this works.
No, that's not how BAP does our campaigns. Our
Yeah,
campaigns don't have an end date. Our
exactly.
campaigns end when we seize state power and we no longer have to have this campaign because the people control our institutions. That's when the end date is.
Mhm. Exactly. So we'll be releasing stuff going forward. We'll be sort of summing up some of the things that are happening in Haiti and in Cuba after we're back, and so in the coming weeks. So people should look out for that as well. But April 4th, like Erica said, it's a significant date for many many reasons, and so we're kind of excited to kick things off that day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and also the important part, April 4th, you'll be able to endorse.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
so you can sign up as an organization, or you can sign up as an individual, but you would actually be able to endorse. And that endorsement is not just, okay, we support. That endorsement means that you are ready to get to work. So I hope that we make that clear, because we are thinking in advance beyond April 4th, but we're just getting prepped and ready to actually have the big launch on April 4th. So I'm excited about it. I'm really excited to see where it's going. We already have a lot of dope key partner organizations that have signed on. So yeah, so we're off and running.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and absolutely true, James. Bat busy. I don't think we have not been busy since April 4th, 2017.
Mhm.
That's and as the organization has grown, we have responded to the emerging contradictions or the heightening contradictions of capitalism and global US imperialism, with the necessary urgency. I mean, look, one of the reasons we always say that the answer to all of these problems is to join an organization and to be organized, because there is no way you can confront, deal with, politically educate all of these, that you cannot do this by yourselves. You can't do this on your own. It's too much work. And if you are not in an organization that is itself, or a formation, if you will, that is itself dedicated to increasing the political education of its membership, increasing the knowledge base, and solidifying the ideological understanding of the people within the formation, then you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. I mean, I hate to be like that. You don't have to join BAP. It would be great if you did, but please join an organization that is focused on anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, international solidarity, and preferably Pan-African socialist struggle. That's those are the things that will get us all free. Nothing short of those things is conducive to ensuring people-centered human rights for all people around the world. So, Erica, Austin, and Clow. So sorry that Clow could not come back and join, that her internet wasn't
That will be with
able.
us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm sorry she wasn't able to come back and join tonight, because the internet was not great. But I am so extra excited for you all to be going to Cuba tomorrow. Austin, I don't know if you've told Ricky that she's not going to want to come back, because
Barely got me
I'm
back.
That's right.
I'm still sitting here wondering why I'm not in Cuba right now.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, getting off the plane and seeing all of us, whew, that's something else right there. But thank you all so much for taking time out of your preparations to go to Cuba, of your important work on launching this campaign, to join us to talk about this. We'll be looking for the launch of the Zone of Peace campaign on April 4th. Thank you all so very much for joining us, Ricky, Austin, and Clow.
Thank you.
Thank you,
That,
Jackie.
that.
Bap. All right, y'all. So that's the deal. That is organizing. That is, there's no magic bullet. There's no shortcuts. That's the thing that I think I really would love to convey to people, that there are really no shortcuts to fomenting the revolution. Everybody wants the revolution to start tomorrow, because things are getting so bad, and I get that, and yeah, I hate to tell you that things are going to get worse. Things always do before things turn. And the interesting thing about revolutions is that they never occur with a majority of the population involved in the actual revolution. This is something that I think another thing that we need to be very, very clear about. And we organizers need to not allow to get us discouraged in the work that we do, because we don't have a whole lot of people doing the work that needs to be done in every single organization that's worth its salt. Every revolutionary radical organization that is worth its name, radical revolutionary organization, it's a small majority, it's a small percentage of the people who are actually doing the work. This is true in every organization. This is how it is. There are people who want to get involved for whatever reasons, but they don't really want to do the work. That happens. It happens. And it's just a part of it. It really is. But there are people who are, it's always a very small core group of people compared to the number of people in the organization on the official roles of the organization. That's just how it is. That's just human nature, right? And if revolutionary organizations tend to be that way, some better than others in that regard, then society in general that is not full of revolutionary people at all, they're just full of people who want things not to be as bad as they are. They're just, of course, society is exactly the same way. Revolutionary organizations are almost a reflection of the society they come from in the way that people engage in how they want to drive change. People want things to change. They really, a lot of people just don't want to do the work that's required to make that change happen because the work is difficult. The work requires additional time that working class and poor people don't have a lot of. To be real honest, the work requires additional effort and energy that working class and poor people, we tired, man. We working 2-3 jobs, trying to make ends meet, trying not to be homeless, right? Trying to avoid enough money for a copay so we can get to a doctor to deal with this rotten tooth that we're, popping over the counter pain meds for because we don't have insurance. You feel me? And the system is literally designed to keep the very people who would benefit the most from changing the system from having the capacity to do the work to change this system. This is how highly organized those who prop up the system and perpetuate the system are in making sure we are not organized. Please understand, y'all, that the contradictions we are always raising about how terrible this system is and how much terrible this system is getting every day in literally crushing the life out of working class and poor people in so many different ways, that's done by design. It is an organized effort by members of both political parties and all of the capitalist class and the military apparatus that includes law enforcement and the intelligence agencies. All of these contradictions exist to continue to keep the very people who are the majority of the population, the working class and the poor. We outnumber them, right? Like literally, we outnumber the rich. We outnumber the petty bourgeoisie, the working class and poor do. But because we outnumber them, those few have to make sure in a very organized and coordinated and intentional fashion that we are so overwhelmed by trying to survive that we don't have the time or the energy or the capacity in any other way to organize to get rid of them. And in a very weird way, this is exactly why we need to be organized to get rid of them. Despite the challenges that we face that they put in front of us to try to keep us from being organized, we have got to find some kind of revolutionary, whatever it is you want to call it, optimism, revolutionary energy, something, anything. You don't have to do as much as people like me do. Because once I figured out a little bit of this, I began plotting how the hell I can get out of this system and what I could do within that was in my power to help other people see that we need to do it. I figured out along the way that I can't make people do anything. I can talk, I can be persuasive, but I can lead folks somewhere, but I can't make them do anything. But I am responsible for what I know. And I began trying to figure out how do I do this? How do I share with people what I know? Because people I can't be the only person who knows this. I cannot keep this to myself. None of the people I know this. So I began to try to figure out, like, what can I do with what I know how to do? And what I knew how to do was talk, to tell you the truth. And I didn't even really want to do it until I met Abdus. And he was that dude who was like, I'll be your backbone. You get out there and talk because you're good at it. And if anybody has a problem with it, they're gonna have to deal with me. But yeah, this is what we're gonna do. I'm not saying you have to do everything that I do or everything that people like Ricky and Austin and Cloud or even the students at HU. No, okay. But there is something that you can do. 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week. You can join a political education study group. You can invite some of your friends, your family. Practice organizing on your family members. I cannot tell you how weird it was for me in the most gratifying but odd way to hear my stepmom say that, yeah, I think I'm a socialist because I think Walmart needs to redistribute that wealth that they and she got that kind of stuff from listening to me. Connecting what Jesus did in the Bible, because my mom, my stepmom, and my dad, they holy people. They all up in the church of God in Christ and all that kind of stuff. But when I talk about socialism from the biblical perspective, because you can't tell me that what Jesus did wasn't socialism, how did I know that was going to come back from my own family saying, oh, well, I get what socialism is now. I think it's not so bad if Jesus did it. There's nothing mystical about organizing. There's no magic to it. There are some people who are better at some aspects of it than other people. You bring your talents, your gifts, your passions to organizing, and you maximize those things that you are great at and you're passionate about, and you don't worry so much about the things that you're not, and you provide support in other areas. But there's nothing magical about any of this. This is what I've learned along the way. This is what I've learned about organizing from people like Ajamu Baraka, from people like Netfa Freeman, right? It's not, there's nothing magical about it. From people like Ricky Ryan, who started BAP Baltimore. There wasn't a Baltimore chapter of BAP in Baltimore when Ricky just said, let's just start a group. Started with a couple of people. Same thing in DC. I don't know what I'm doing. But there are people in DC who want to be a part of a citywide alliance. So we're figuring this thing out together. We're doing some things. We're getting some things done. I thank you for this great point, Ricky. Organizations need note keepers for meetings. Organizations need timekeepers for meetings. We need secretaries to keep up with our documentation. It's simple stuff. It's not. We need people who have the space to store materials. It's not Hollywood sexy stuff. It's basic. It's basic, just getting the work done, having conversations with people, raising people's awareness about how these issues impact them, that they do impact them, and why they impact them, and helping people realize they actually have more power than they ever thought they did to change that. That's organizing. And it must be done. Revolutions do not happen without organizing. Everybody wants the revolution to happen tomorrow. Everybody wants capitalism and militarism to be gone tomorrow, but don't nobody want to join an organization because of whatever reasons they have. I just saw something on Twitter today about, someone who, said that's the reason they don't join organizations is because people in their messy homophobia, transphobia. And look, I'll be the first person to sit here and tell you that we need to contend with people's individual and organizations' internal contradictions. They exist. We don't get everything right. We misstep on stuff. We have messy liberal ideas about some things. I would love to sit here and tell you that everybody in the Black Alliance for Peace is ideologically on the same page about everything, but I would be lying, and I don't like to lie. because your lies, they always come to light. We have to deal with liberalism among some members about the unprincipled way we handle conflict and contradictions in organizations. We have to hold each other accountable for better ways, more principled ways to deal with these issues that we have. Yeah, we have to deal with sometimes some men who have archaic ideas about gender and sexuality. I will never forget, and I will be forever grateful. And I think I'm going to re-air that episode one day of a show that me and Abdus did, where, and Abdus was an old school dude. He still had some cavemanish ideas about gender roles and sexuality and that kind of thing. And it wasn't as deep as, he was anti-gay or anti-trans or anything like that. But he had a problem with pronouns. And his thing was just like, I don't understand why we have to deal with that, blah, blah, blah. And I love, and he was transparent enough. This was the thing that I loved about Abdus, that a lot of people, I hope people picked up on it, but I picked up on it. It took me a while to pick up on it, but when I did, I valued him so much more, as if I could do such a thing. And I love that man so much more. And my respect for him was just out the window at that point. He was not afraid to admit that, you know what, I could be wrong on this. Right? He was one of those rare old school dudes who was fine with like just coming right out in public, like, look, this is what I believe in. It's probably kind of shitty, but this is what I believe in. I don't understand what the big deal about it is, but maybe I'm wrong. And yeah, he would sometimes say it with a little attitude, like, I know y'all gonna come after me. But in the moment, he was just like, you know what? Me and Jackie have had this conversation, and she's been kind of getting me on me on it, but I'm telling you, I'm just not feeling it. Maybe I'm wrong. Y'all maybe need to set me straight. And you know what? The comrades did right there on the show, live stream, in the chat. But they did it in such a principled and loving and respectful and honorable way, honoring that man's intellect, not putting him down, not calling him names, not dismissing him because he was expressing an archaic way of thinking, as if he didn't have the capacity to change. People recognized in him that he clearly had the capacity to change because he was willing and open to being criticized. Comrades, people recognize that and were able to engage him in a principled way. And you saw it on that show. He got it. He was a little salty. But when we ended that show that night, that man said to me, Jackie, we are with the right people. And most of these folks were BAP comrades. Jackie, we were the right people. That's how I know we were the right people. I respect those kids. And he did still call y'all kids. Y'all know who you were, who engaged him that night. He said, I respect those kids because they respected me as an elder, even as they challenged some of the ways that I was thinking. I respect those kids. We were the right people. We made the right decision to hook up with Ajamu and BAP. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that these issues don't arise, right? Where people you respect might say something, maybe in jest, that they shouldn't have publicly, or somebody legitimately has very liberal ideas and they are using their access to a formation that has a very large email listserv to promote their liberal ideas. It happens. And you have to make a decision as someone who is on the leadership body of the formation. Do you want to engage this foolishness and give this people more attention, or do you want to ignore it and suck suck the life and the air out of it and let it go on and die on the vine. And usually those people go away because they no longer have an audience. Yeah. Happens. Absolutely happens. But that's the struggle. That is the struggle internally that we individuals, that we people, that we human beings have to have with each other, in organization with each other. And honestly, can I just be honest? That's the struggle we better be having with ourselves. Because if we're sitting here saying, I bet not be sitting here saying to you, telling you that you need to be in an organization and not confront the ways I have had to challenge myself over my own shitty liberalism. Being in organization and hanging back and not volunteering to take on tasks that I know damn well I can do, but I'm too tired. I've got this other medical stuff going on. That's true, I do, but I still have a capacity to contribute more than I know I have been. And I know this about me, and I'm just making excuses for why I'm not engaged. And that's liberalism. And I needed to check myself on that. Yeah. All this stuff. Absolutely. And look at that. My boss shows up. I jokingly call him my boss. He's not my boss. He's nobody's boss. But I jokingly call him that because Ajamu Baraka is one of the few people who can call me, email me, text me, ask me to do something, and the answer is almost always yes. And that was true of Abdus too. So he said we were almost able to do that with BLM until the enemy put them in charge of the Floyd protest. That's the other thing. We must constantly see this, what he do. We must constantly be on the lookout for the ways the state will co-opt movements and organizations. Constantly. And that includes infiltrating our own shit. Constantly. Absolutely. When I'm telling you all, I know this is a little extra. When I'm telling you all that organizing isn't sexy, the people you see always in front of the cameras, that is seriously, y'all, that's a moment in time. It is a moment in time, and it is such a small moment in time compared to all of the other work that we are doing behind the scenes that doesn't get broadcast. One aspect of that work is always being on the lookout for infiltration of your organization, for agents, and for the state infiltrating and using other organizations for their own purposes. Got to be on the lookout for that. And your response to all of it has to be principled. We can get emotional and cuss folks out and whatnot behind closed doors, but we need to be disciplined in our public response to these kinds of public issues. And that organizational discipline, that's something that you don't get by being out here all by yourself, just all willy-nilly. You learn that organizational discipline from being in organizations, because all of a sudden, you're not just you. It's not just you. I'm not just out here. Me and Abdus, we weren't just Abdus and Jackie. We were Abdus and Jackie, members of the Black Alliance for Peace. We were Abdus and Jackie, members of Pan-African Community Action. We were Abdus and Jackie, members of Black Power Media. We were Abdus and Jackie, associated with By Any Means Necessary. We weren't out here by ourselves. We're connected to other people whose purpose and mission was bigger than us and what we wanted to do or say at any given time. Ooh, and for somebody like me, y'all know how hard that is? Do you understand how hard that is? For me not to just, every time somebody pisses me off, turn on this camera and just start cussing people out like other folks have done and profited off of. but I am not out here by myself. I am out here as a representative, whether I like it or not, whether that's what I signed on for or not, as a member of a formation of people whose principles, whose missions are bigger than me and my feelings. You don't get that being out here by yourself. You get that from organization. You get that discipline from organization. So, and ain't nothing I just told you anything sexy that anybody wants to jump up and do because it's the sexiest thing in the world. But I tell you what, revolution doesn't happen without any of it. It just does not. The rest of the people around the world who are rising up against these forces that we're fighting to overturn in this country, they know that. Because a lot of these countries have a history of revolution that we don't. Working class people's revolution, indigenous people's revolution. We don't have that history in this country, so we don't understand it. So we're having to create it ourselves. And we're intentionally, we must take the history, the history of people's struggles from around the country, from around the world, rather, from the continent, particularly from the global south, and apply it to our revolutionary aims. So we need to understand this organization thing, this organizing thing. For some people, it might not be sexy. Thank you for saying that. Sexy is subjective. Sexy to me, because I don't know what people thought really made me convinced that Abdul-Shahid Luqman was the dude. But when I found out that he was a Pan-Africanist and he was an internationalist and anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist and wanted to be a part of organizing efforts, I was like, oh, wait now. Oh, that's a level of connection, and that's something else right there. I may never get that again. I don't know, but I'm glad as hell I got it once in my life. So none of this is yeah, it's not something most people will sign on to do because it's a lot of thankless background grunt work, and don't nobody want to do that stuff unless, of course, you actually do want to change this system. Then if you do, organizing is for you. Join an organization. Join an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, Pan-Africanist, international solidarity-focused organization. We do not get revolution any other way. So that's it for me, y'all. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me tonight. We got a lot of work to do. You see, I intentionally did not talk about the major news today about Donald Trump's indictment because, yeah, it's not going to play out the way people think it's going to play out, I don't think. And I don't think people are ready for what Trump supporters are going to do or have the potential to do in either case. If he gets his perp walk and gets convicted, or if he gets his perp walk and gets off. People are not ready for what them people fitting to do. But what I can tell you is I don't think this indictment is going to work out the way people who are celebrating it. I don't think it's going to work out the way they think it's going to work out. And history has actually shown us that. I talked about it on my monologue this morning on By Any Means Necessary. So I'm going to drop that for you to listen to so you can understand what I mean. Because I ain't going to talk about it no more. I'm just going to watch what happens. I'm going to watch people be disappointed again. And then we're going to govern ourselves accordingly and organize for the people's revolution that the rest of us need. So thank you all so much for joining me tonight in this special organizing edition of People's Power Hour here in Luqman Nation. See y'all next Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time for another great show. See you on April 3rd for those of you in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area at the Shaw Library at 6:30 p.m. And see the rest of y'all on April 4th for the launch of the Black Alliance for Peace's campaign to support the CELAC Zone of Peace. I'll see y'all in these streets regardless. Peace.